And so
Really?
he sees us both up here. So yeah, this is a first for me. So I apologize anybody watching, the few that are right now, that this is a trial and error. And I wanted to do this for a long time, but it's just something I don't have a lot of time to spend at night. And it's also easier for me to curate sometimes these different time zones that aren't good for streaming. So in any case, um, without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started because this will be saved in a video that
Right.
people can watch in the future. So it's not so much for live purposes only. Of course, if we will take some questions at some
Yeah,
point.
hopefully there'll be some people with, questions, follow-up questions, et cetera, hopefully.
Yeah. And really, I think what we should do, especially while we're starting off, maybe just a little bit of most everybody, certainly people that are jumping on early, but for people that are watching that may not know your background, just a little bit about yourself to, you know, acquaint some people with your
Well,
history.
okay. I figured by now everybody knew
And they should, but
what the story was.
if
I've
they
just
watch my channel a lot, but just in case,
yeah,
because you did make your mark way back in the day, and that's one of the great things about you is you've been in the industry. I don't even want to say how many decades, but
yeah, way too many. Don't speak those numbers aloud. But yeah, I've spent a lifetime in this business and hobby, and going all the way back to the mid 70s when I got, started professionally. Anyway, fast forward to working up in Canada with the Oracle turntable people, and then coming back and starting this little business of mine called the Mod Squad back in 1982, and that evolved into McCormack Audio. So that's where the various equipment that I designed, came from. Going back to the early modifications that I was doing, and then one of the first products was Tiptoes, which you mentioned, which kind of got the ball rolling on the whole vibration isolation, thought process, I guess we'll say. And then started designing my own equipment, the line drive series of passive preamplifiers, and then that became the TLC one, and then an ALD one preamplifier, and then the amps, the DNA amplifier series, DNA one, DNA 0.5, DACs, transport, CD players, etc. So
even a multi-channel preamp.
yeah, well, that came when the business was sold to the Conrad Johnson Design Group in about 1997,
Okay.
and they moved the whole business, literally picked it up and moved it back to Virginia where they were. But I stayed out here and did design work from my home here in Vista in California. And yes, the I think the DNA 225 amplifier was the first product that I did for them, and that was the follow-up for the DNA one. And then the DNA 125 was the replacement for the DNA 0.5. And then I did the RLD1 preamplifier, full remote control preamp.
I
And
had
then
that
and
piece.
then
Yeah.
we did a multi-channel version of that, the MAP one, which was a six-channel, linear preamplifier, no processing in it, but the idea was that you'd get a DVD player that had analog outputs, plug all of the channels into the preamp, and then you could control them from there. And there was also two-channel inputs on it, so you could combine two-channel and multi-channel systems through it. And I was very fond of that solution because most of my experience, well, pretty much all of my experience with surround sound processes, regardless of price at the time, was that they didn't sound very good.
Still don't. Most of them
Okay.
until I found one
So
recently.
so this was a way to kind of, and run around that by having all of the processing done in the player, and then analog outputs fed to the preamp. And then you had full control of all of the multiple channels, levels, blends, etc. Um, and including you could adjust things on the fly.
Plus,
Uh,
that was a time when SACD, DVD audio, there was multi-channel music, not just for movies and home theater.
that's true.
And you
That's
had your universal player too.
right, the UDP one. which, filled that niche very nicely. So that combined with the map one in a multi-channel setup, and that allowed you to really switch back and forth between two-channel focused listening or surround sound for music and movies. Now,
Yeah.
that was an idea that didn't really catch on. Most people wanted to stick with a processor solution of some sort.
And cost wise, people just weren't used to investing for multi-channel, I think. But in hindsight, maybe that product would be even more popular today. But I think, yeah,
People
you
who
won't.
had it loved it. I
Yeah.
got lots of good feedback about it. Anyway, I think it was a good idea, but it just was not something that caught on.
Yeah, so I have a video for anybody watching that goes through Zoom with Steve, going through his detailed background, even doing recordings. My takeaways have been I've been dealing with Steve ever since the 90s. I had his DNA amp. And the great thing about Steve, not only has been ahead of the curve, not only with multi-channel, like we just were talking about with his Map One product, but and then his amps got a lot of acclaim from Stereophile, and that got him, and I bought those. But what really separated him from all the brands out there, number one, started the whole vibration control industry with Tiptoes. But actually, with Mod Squad, your first company, you were well ahead of the curve in terms of modding gear. And the difference
That's how I
between,
started out. Yeah.
yeah, and so one of the pedigrees that you look for, anybody can just part swap and say they're a modder, but can they actually build the piece that they're modding as well? And so Steve has done everything from multi-channel preamps that almost nobody's done, universal CD players, preamps, passive, both passive, active, you name it, amps, having that pedigree on the recording side, amp, preamp, all of these things, digital side, your own DAC, and being able to mod them has, enamored me over the years in terms of that's the kind of people and the ability to take that product, the DNA, and always send it to you for upgrades was
Yeah.
so much of a benefit. I didn't have to pay dealer and distributor markup, which is what is common in the industry where they'll just come out with a Mark II, make you neurotic about your old model, and you have to pay it all over again. And then you get very little value on what you got rid of. I never had to change my amps for 20 plus years. And it's a good segue into the purpose of this call, because the purpose of this call is to address a purchase that Steve made of the Sourcepoint 10s, which I featured. That was one of the first to feature them on YouTube because I captured the demo that Andrew Jones did at
Right.
Capital Audio Fest.
And
It
and
was probably popular.
that was timely for me because I was just thinking about getting another set of speakers for a different system. And I had been looking at a variety of smaller speakers, typically two-way sorts of things. And then you attended that show and did the video coverage of his room with the Sourcepoint 10s. And I just went, yes, that's perfect. So I was an early adopter of the Sourcepoint 10s, and happily so. I've enjoyed that speaker a lot since getting them. That was like November of 22 or something like that. Um, and I've just had nothing but good times and fun with them. Uh, does it have drawbacks? I mean, okay, we can say that it was not a perfect speaker, but I felt that at the price point that it delivered a lot of performance. And I got the matching stands and filled them with cat litter as per Andrew Jones' instructions. They're pretty lively without the fill, but anyway, took care of that, and I've been really enjoying them since then. But it's one of those things where when I like something well enough like that, I start thinking about how it might be better. So, like, what could I do to maybe upgrade it? And I was talking with Andrew, oh, maybe over a year ago at this point, and mentioned to him that I'd been enjoying them that much, and I was thinking about doing a crossover upgrade. And he said, "Well, hold off. I'm working on that, and we'll have it pretty soon." So I said, "Okay." Nobody better equipped to do that than Andrew, the speaker designer, and that it took a little while. but it's finally done, and I think it's shipping now. I'm not completely clear about that. They sent me an early version of the kit. I mean, it's the standard kit. It's exactly what they will be delivering. Um, but I was happy to get that. And in fact, ta-da,
Cool. Yeah.
there it is. Um, I unfortunately I cannot share with you what the crossovers look like because they're in the speakers.
They're in the speaker, but yeah, I think their
And
website has a detail of all the parts and
yeah, I
what it
mean,
looks
you
like,
sort
right?
of get the idea. The crossovers in there. They give you some foam plugs that you can tune the ports with if you care to. I experimented with that a little bit, but uh, I felt I preferred it without. Um, but these are the original crossovers and back plates that came out. Now, in my case, the crossover had been mounted to the internal structure of the speaker, and then later on they changed that to where it was attached to the back plate. Um, Mine, I had to remove the back plate, and I had maybe a little bit more difficulty. It wasn't none of this was very difficult. Uh,
Andrew has a whole video walking you through
Yeah,
it too.
Andrew, if you go to the MoFi website and look up the Sourcepoint 10s, there's a page about the Master Edition upgrade kit that includes a video of Andrew walking you through the whole thing. And it's a very well thought out kit. And in fact, I would say that anybody with any DIY experience and or even just the ability to use some hand tools basically can handle this. There's no soldering involved. Most of the later models of the speaker, when you remove the back plate where the binding posts are, the crossover is attached, so the whole thing comes right out. So you literally remove the driver on the front, disconnect the wires, unscrew the back plate, and just out it comes, in goes the new one. And you hook up the wires and screw it back together. I mean, it's really that simple. Um, the um, the wires themselves are coded by the size of there's a fast on connector, and the connector sizes are done so that you cannot reverse positive and negative. Um, you
Pretty
know,
foolproof then.
yeah, and you have to pay attention to which ones are the tweeter and the woofer, but that's labeled as well. So as long as you're aware of that, you shouldn't have any difficulty. Um, and I think the kit is selling online for $295. So basically, right at $300, and it's an excellent upgrade. I couldn't recommend it more highly for anybody that has the original speakers. Now, at this point in time, they are now everything they're shipping now is the Master Edition, has all this upgrade work in it. But for anybody out there who still, was an early adopter like me, can't recommend it more highly. It was a transformative improvement. One of the minor complaints that I had, and we discussed this as well, is the Vandersteen speakers that I had been living with throw a very large three-dimensional sound stage, sound field, very expansive and open, which I like very much, similar to the open baffle designs that you prefer as well. And now we both have the the potpourri electrostatic. So yeah, um, but the sound was very focused and not expansive in that sense. You had, it's when you got in the sweet spot and you're in the focal point, everything came together, sounded excellent, and you could really change the tonality and the balance of the tweeter, for instance, by just positioning, positioning the speakers and then how you were positioned relative to the speakers. So you could kind of dial all that in. Now, the new crossovers lift the performance in every category, in every respect. They also include a switch for the tweeter level. So you can have, from 0, you can go +2 or -2 dB, 3-position switch. So again, useful for fine tuning, but the performance of the speaker just lifted to a different level, a much higher level. Coherence, resolution, tonal richness, harmonic balance, everything improved. And lo and behold, it suddenly was producing a very three-dimensional large soundstage. And that honestly, of all the improvements, that surprised me because I kind of expected everything else, but getting the dimensionality out of it as well was a nice surprise and really wonderful. Um, so in fact, at, by the time that was all said and done, that was, I think, an extremely fine speaker, and honestly, I could really have lived pretty happily with that. So for the money, which is now like $3,000-ish is the retail,
With the
maybe,
master edition included.
yeah, for the master edition. I don't know that may not include the stands, and some kind of stand is important, good stands. If you have your own, fine. If not, then the ones that they
It's a pretty big, it's not a bookshelf. It's a
No,
big
it
speaker.
is not. It's a big speaker. It can fool you when you see pictures of it, and it's the concentric driver, the 10-inch two-way. You can be fooled into thinking that it's not. It's like a bookshelf. It's a small speaker, but no, it's quite beefy and large.
No, it's a killer speaker, and the advantages it has, I think, quite frankly, I would take it over the new V10 Master Edition with the three driver complement. I think if I needed that extra bass that's giving me, I would probably do subs with the tens and
Mhm.
put the subs where they belong in the room. For each room, it's probably a better location than in the same cabinet. But for most
Sure.
people, as Andrew had told us, I think he agrees, just like he agrees that active crossovers would be superior. They just don't
Right.
sell.
Right.
It is best if you're not good at integrating subs to
Yes.
let
Exactly.
the designer create a box with basically subs in it, which is new. His newer version, the V10 Master Edition with the huge one. But really, for most people, you're not sacrificing much with the Sourcepoint 10s. And then for this extra $300, if you've already bought it, or the current retail, you're getting a nice increase, which you're telling us for modest amount of cost. And
Right.
if follows into what I've always experienced buying Steve's products is that, you know, I could send it back to him, whatever new technology or parts that he found were better than what he was using in the 90s or whatever decade, he could upgrade them. And that was a much more cost-effective way to upgrade and get tangible, listenable, audible differences. And so it's great to see a company like MoFi not just try to milk you for a new model, and give you a relatively cost-effective mod that's easy that's another thing. The
Yeah, I
actual
wanted to show
oh
people the actual kit. Looks like, since we don't have or I don't have screen sharing figured out just yet, but this shows you the crossover assemblies on the back pan plate, the back plate, and the foam inserts, etc. And they provide the tools with it. And as far as instructions go, all you have to do is watch the video that Andrew did, and you see everything except one thing, which I will show you here. Um, this assembly fits perfectly into the hole. So when you take out the old one and you go to put this new one in, there is no room. There's no give. It's a perfect fit. It's like they made this as big as they possibly could to get everything in there. And so you have to be quite careful how you line it up. And one of the things that they don't tell you is that the wires for the tweeter, let's see if you can see this. Um, okay, you see that little opening in the circuit board right there?
yeah,
And these wires right here?
yeah,
These wires have to be tucked into that groove,
or it won't fit
or it
the
won't fit.
okay.
But the groove is there in the circuit board for that purpose. So you just have to shove the wires down in that, and then she'll slide
Well,
in.
that's a good tip. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's great, but fairly easy. Most people would sweat having to do crossover mods and getting the soldering gun out and all that kind of stuff. And the fact that they were able to do that without any requirements for that skill set is a definite plus. Because soldering can be a minefield with some
Oh
people,
yeah,
and you
yes,
don't
that's
want to
what
have,
I
poor
understand.
joints on that. And you can actually damage things too. So yeah, so that's a great feedback on that. It's a very popular speaker, at least certainly when it was released, and now this gives it new life without having to buy a new model. And it kind of good transition while we have you here to talk about again your history and what you semi-retired, but I'm trying to pull you out of retirement
Right.
because, well, you pulled yourself out of retirement doing this
Yeah.
A1 amp clone that with musical fidelity, one that I was always very fond of. Tim DeParavincini inspired design, or at least partially responsible for the original. Um, Learned that he was actually going to release before his death his own version with his parts choice and stuff
Mhm.
integrated, but you were able to find that the Chinese at a very low cost try to copy it. Wasn't that good of an amp overall, but for the money, if somebody is certainly at that budget point, you could do far worse. But it had the bones that you thought could be used
Exactly.
for your modding experience to
Yeah.
create a nice amp.
I got several different low power class A amp clones that I was curious to check out. Um, and and the A1 stood out among them as being worth pursuing. So I did some basic modification work to it, and it responded very nicely. It started sounding actually pretty good. So then I thought it was worth really doing a full treatment too. So I did the chassis work with the gravity base, complete overhaul of the circuit boards, and some revisions of the circuitry itself, different output devices, although the ones they provided are actually pretty good. And my initial goal was to keep everything in the original package, which is a pretty small footprint, but it's real hefty amp. And as we know, 25 watts Class A can run pretty hot. I adjusted the bias, you know, I tweaked it a bit so that it would get quite warm, but not like seriously hot, not frying egg hot like the original one would do. Um,
And that's something that can impact reliability on top of,
right.
harm to people that touch it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I was glad to hear that you were able to do that. And that amp, uh, I actually tried on my Potpourri WR2s, and
Hmm.
actually Doug has that exact model in use right now.
Right.
Was giving you feedback. He gave me feedback. Phenomenal sounding with efficient speakers. It's about 25 watts. Is that right?
25. And I know that that sounds like not very much power to a lot of us, or something you have to really kind of dance around getting exactly the right speaker match for. But really, it's much more versatile than that number would make you think. And I've now tried it on a variety of speakers, and it does not sound low powered at all. I could easily fool people into thinking that was at least a 100 watt per channel amplifier. Very dynamic, very ballsy, excellent bass. Um, yeah, nothing lightweight or timid about the sound. Really nice. I like it a lot. Um, so, so of course, 25 watts. All right, there's only so far you can go. And if you have low sensitivity speakers, then that eats up amp power very quickly. And so you started agitating for the monoblock version.
Yeah, because there's
And I
no
thought, okay,
substitute
all
for
right,
heavy
fine,
load.
let's do a monoblock. Well, that turned out to be quite a bit more difficult than I had anticipated. Not the making the monoblock out of it, that was straightforward, but it was noisy. It had noise issues, and I wrestled with that for a while. And then finally came to the realization that probably was not going to work in the original package. And so if we want to do monoblocks, which would be basically a 100 watt monoblock Class A amplifier, then it's going to need to be in a different chassis, a different layout. And so now that's moving away from my original thought, but expanding the possibilities of who can use it under what circumstances, et cetera. And so Jason now has gotten involved with finding a
Chassis
like
inspirations.
soul
My
who,
longtime desire to be a amp maker, but not do the amp making,
right,
just choose the chassis. So yeah, we've been working on this just to kind of break down. I know a lot of people sent me emails. Basically, the stereo price point is going to depend on the tariff situation at any point in time. That's why we've been reluctant to mention it, but roughly $3,500 for the stereo version. And you say, oh, that's a big jump over the Chinese version, but the performance is a big jump. If you're at the budget that's all you can do is the Chinese version, as Steve said, he's tried a bunch of Class A cheap Chinese ones, then that's your choice. Stick with that and don't worry about upgrading. But if you want something that is actually certainly with efficient speakers could be your end game for a long
absolutely,
time.
yeah,
You really should try out his amp because it's being used with in the WR2s, that's 30 something $1,000 speakers, and
right,
it's not timid at all. And that sweetness that the A1 is known for is very addictive to listen to, and just so that's why it got re-released by Musical Fidelity because and it gets
right,
the red carpet treatment still to this day in their demos at their displays
right.
at Munich. There's something special about that. Props to Tim DeParavancini on
Oh
that.
yeah, yes,
What I really wanted to do, since the only drawback that is tangible for sure in some systems, in some large rooms, in some demands, at some SPLs is going to be 20 something watts that for certain speakers won't work. But the mono blocks quadruple that. And then we're talking about almost any speaker within reason can be powered by it. And then when we're talking about being able to maybe change the budget profile, change the aesthetics, really kind of not go from being a modified clone to a from scratch build by Steve McCormack, the monoblocks. These will be a significant jump in price, significantly different chassis, but really not a modified clone. So it's really three different recommendations we have for you. If you got a tight budget, get that Chinese clone, very nice for that budget point. Still not going to be probably your end game, so it's got some problems overall. And just with heat alone. But the modified stereo going to be very attractive to many people. This monoblock I'm looking at as my end game type speaker, both on amp on looks and performance. It's got that brings me back to square one. The A1 was my first amp. Still love that sound, love that sweetness. If we can do that in monoblocks with Steve McCormack's pedigree now, everything in the hobby comes together for me. So at least I'm doing this, needling you for me.
Yeah.
Hopefully, and we've already got so many other people who feel the same way about both products.
There's been a lot of interest in it.
A lot of interest.
Let me interject here while we're talking about this, that the monoblocks are a work in progress,
Yes.
and so I can't say exactly when they will be ready. As soon as I can, really get that sorted out. The stereo amp's available right now by special order. It's not a regular production thing. I don't keep them in stock, but we're ready to turn those out. If any of you are interested in that, by all means, talk to Jason.
Yeah, I guess I got to announce that I'm, quote, a dealer for that product because
Mhm.
it just kind of fell into my lap. You don't really like dealing with dealers. That's one of the reasons you got into Mod Squad and
Well,
the whole,
as you pointed out, I'm technically retired,
exactly. So,
but I'm developing various products. I've got a number of irons in the fire of new things coming along, but the production of this will be handled by my partner Patrick through SMC Performance Upgrades,
okay.
and so that's where these will be coming from under my supervision. Of course, I've done all of the developmental work, and we'll keep that all
Yeah,
Okay.
so all my videos have an email address where you can reach me and even a phone number too. So the stereo version is available. News breaking on this front today is that that is available. The monoblocks don't have an ETA for sure. Maybe Capital Audio Fest, we can have something, but this is a very substantial project because it is designed to be something that it will compete with anything. And in most, whether you want to look at aesthetics, performance, whatever it is, that's what the goal is with this. So there's not going to be a rush to just get something out. This
Right.
is something that, again, if you're retired, you're not going to just put something out for just money purposes. That's not the purpose here.
That's right.
Purpose is do something that is really special. And then for me, this is really would be, I found my holy grail of speakers. I need my holy grail of amps and, in the chassis that I like. So this is going to be a really fun project. Can't wait to fill you guys in on more on that. But we can open it up to questions for the people
Yeah.
that are
Good
watching,
idea. Uh,
either on the Sourcepoint 10s and anything with to do with that modification, or Steve in general,
sure.
or in
Sure.
particular with these amps.
Go
I
ahead.
know this is not
Ask me
something,
anything.
yeah, feel free to post a question. Um, going live is not my thing, so it's not, um, you know, um, maybe I should start doing this more often. I'd love to get people's feedback on this. I just don't have a lot of time to do this. And then I like to get really, I don't want to just be me babbling for hours. I'd like to get people that have time to do this kind of stuff because this is what really increased my learning curve over the years is finding the right people and leveraging their experience. And then that's what I try to do with my channel is give you guys a way to leapfrog all the challenges, learning curve I have. And, for some people, it's worked really well. So I'm gonna keep doing it. Let's see what we got question that just came. So what are the price of the upgraded stereo amp? 3,500 is the stereo version from that's the modified Chinese Class A1 clone. And then the monoblocks are not yet on the market.
Right.
Those would be closer to almost a five-figure price point, more than likely. But that would be 100 watts. So there's no hard and fast rule, but your speakers are over 90 dB efficient,
90
probably.
and up, it'll do an excellent job driving them. Even, the source points, I think they say they're 89, something like that. It drove the heck out of those. It did a great job. So there's a lot of speakers that can be very well served by that.
Oh, and I will say this, if you are doing like a lot of people that follow me and especially in the WhatsApp group, if you're a Bach user using active crossovers, using subs, if you are actually offloading the bass
Right.
from your mains to subs, crossing it over at 50, 60, 70, 80, or whatever it is, more than likely, even if your speakers as a whole aren't that efficient, if you're relieving it of the bass duties, that 20 something watts is more than enough for
Right.
the mid range and tweeter and just a little
Exactly.
bit of the bass driver. So if you are actively crossing over your sub and relieving your mains, not doing the high pass like some people espouse, um, then that stereo amp at 3,500 is going to be killer. Yeah, I would put it up against, $10,000 or more amps easily, as long as it can drive those speakers. So that's a big tip that I guess we could give people as a part of, if you're looking for a way to get the best bang for the buck, you can buy the speaker you want, even if it's not that efficient, but find a way, whether it's with Bach or other kind of active crossover, to offload the bass performance to subs, which are fairly economical these days. SVS sub is high quality enough
Right.
for most
Yep.
people's, especially if you're in this budget point. You could put together, and I probably would like to do this at a show one time, a system that's under $5,000 or $10,000 that I think would compete with these mega dollar ones, probably less than the cables cost in some of these other rooms.
Well,
So
That's true. And in keeping with what we were just talking about, if you had a pair of, for instance, Sourcepoint 10s and one or two of the SVS subs being crossed over through whether it's the box system or the mini DSP or whatever appropriate crossover, then and the again we're talking about in this case subs that have the amplifiers built in, then this 25-watt Class A amplifier would do just a tremendously good job. Yeah, it'll do everything you would hope for.
Yeah, one of the questions is 6 or 8 ohm speakers. I mean, obviously 6 ohms would be better than the 6 or 4 ohm speakers.
It'll handle 4 ohms, no problem, and somewhat below that.
You got to be careful though. Sometimes speakers rated at 4 ohms, when you actually look at it, they're kind of fudging. It sometimes will dip.
Well, okay, true. That's true. I haven't been able to do really comprehensive testing with a wide variety of speakers, but I've used it with conventional dynamic speakers and electrostatics, and it's done an excellent job with everything I've tried it with.
I think the best thing to do is email me what your system is right now, what speakers you're using now, and about the size of the room, what your taste profile in listening volume is, and then I can give you an honest answer of whether you might want to wait for the monoblocks or the stereo is more than enough. And certainly let me know if you're using subs and any kind of active crossover, because that's one way right off the bat to improve your system. When you can offload that bass performance from your mains and your amp, people just, and it's integrated properly. That's
Right.
the problem. Most subs are not integrated properly. So you get those two benefits, but you offset it with improper integration and it gets bloated and whatever. But those three things are huge benefits that if you haven't done that to your system, you may want to look into that. And I've covered plenty of tools from the Bach. Danville Signal Processing does a great crossover. Mini DSP, which I've owned, does a great way to do it. Trinoff, there's a ton of very high level tools to help you integrate bass. And speaking of bass, I guess I'll go ahead and tip you guys off onto something else. I wouldn't buy a sub just yet. Working on a custom sub, because one of the biggest things in the hobby that I've always found a little bit less than high end. I mean, I've found great high end amps, great high end speakers, DACs, whatnot, true high end. I don't think some of the brands that are represented as high end and exorbitant price points for subwoofers necessarily impress me to the same lengths of these other pieces of gear in the hobby. And so to that end, I found somebody, or actually he found me, with a great idea and a great way to create a true high-end sub that fits all the parameters that I look for, on top of aesthetics. Because one of the other big problems with subwoofers is that they never have had the aesthetic cachet of other pieces in the hobby, whether it's speakers or amps or preamps. Even DACs now are very pretty. And that's part of our system enjoyment, something that you can look at, and anybody that denies that is just fooling themselves. But subwoofers have always failed to really deliver an aesthetic element that I think is cool. And that's about to change, about to change. At least I think so. And the people that we've been testing it with in trial testing, what we've been doing. So stay tuned for that, as well as ways to integrate that properly. I think super easy to integrate in today's market with the products we have. But there is a good issue here. The Great Babu is asking a question. The biggest thing with integrating subs is the fact that preamps with one set of output make it hard to integrate subs and no crossover. And that's why the high level method is I give Rel credit for that, offering that. I don't give credit for that being a superior approach. Anybody wants to call that superior, I think it could sound good, can sound great, can maybe get to a level, but anytime you're not relieving your mains and not relieving your amps of that same duty that's going from the subs, uh, you're missing out on two big areas that could definitely be noticeable audible. So if you're not doing that, you're limiting what kind of audible improvements you can have. It can still be integrated good. There are people that are talented at that. You can use software to integrate it even with high level and time align it somewhat. But high level to me is not the ultimate way to integrate a sub to get the most bang for your buck. So I agree, certain preamps, but nowadays in the digital domain, and I think Steve, you'll echo this, the best way to do crossovers now are in the digital domain. Almost everything is better to be done in the digital domain other than a preamp volume
I
controller.
have to agree, and the power of the DSP systems to provide all of the EQ, the time alignment, the crossover point and slope. A lot of these things, have tremendous flexibility. I guess the only downside to that is that unless you have some idea of what you're doing and of how to integrate a subwoofer, then they can be sort of an embarrassment of riches. You have too many choices, but it's quite clear, as far as I'm concerned, and I know you feel the same, that that kind of power really serves this need better than anything else. There have been, over the years, a lot of people have made analog crossovers, but they typically are not super popular. And one of the reasons is because they're quite limited in their flexibility, typically, and they're quite audible in their effect on the system. Anyway, most of those issues are resolved with really high quality DSP, and that is, in my estimation, the best way to do this. And you named a number of different products that can handle that, and a number of those are really quite affordable. So if you want to integrate subwoofers properly, I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, real quick, Great Babu is asking about the Bach being $5,000 to $10,000. The Bach for Mac,
Bach for
starts
Mac.
in that range. You probably wouldn't get to 10,000. Almost nobody spends that on the Bach for Mac. There are various options. You can go crazy on options. Almost everybody that buys from me, I just recommend certain options, and it's usually in that 6,500 to 7,000 range.
Mhm.
And it's very powerful. You can get cheaper if you go with like a mini DSP SHD. I used that for many years until I got the Bach. Definitely recommend that at that price point. Danville signal processing is a little bit in between those two price points with different products. If you want to go analog, you can go with the Marshans. But this is another point. The source points have EQ now. It's fairly primitive EQ, but it's a toggle switch for
Right?
tweeter
Yeah. Fine tuning,
and
adjustment
fine
of the
tuning.
fader.
So EQ in its, the crossover itself is EQ. People
Absolutely.
having
Yeah.
a bias against EQ is sheer folly because that's what crossovers and these toggle switches are. That's EQ. You could argue that even your volume control is EQ because at different levels of volume,
Right.
our ears perceive different. That's the equal loudness contour and whatnot. So EQ, we are listening to EQ. And then if you go into the mastering, of course, there's EQ there. So let's go ahead and anybody that you ever hear these dogmas, I hate EQ. Well, then you probably don't want to listen to that person, in my opinion. They just haven't evolved to the
That may
level
be
of
rooted
understanding.
in experience from long ago, when the tone controls,
Right.
didn't sound that great.
And a lot of these dogmas just carry on and people get
Yeah.
brainwashed and they never self-check themselves. Hey, is that really applicable today? So that's one big problem is that EQ is one thing. And then what we just talked about is if you're going to do EQ, and we all have EQ, it should be commonplace now. Is it better to be done in the digital domain or analog domain? And, in just almost every aspect, unless you're using DSP improperly, adding too much gain, creating clipping and all kinds of other things. And that's what I'm going to spend more time on in this hobby. Now, if you buy the Bach, it's got it all protected for that. It does it all automated for you. That's why I love the product because I don't have to do tutorials like I had to do it back in the day
Uh-oh.
to make sure it doesn't do what it wants to do. And that it is problematic in the hobby. So I understand that. But in any case, that's a topic for another day, topic for another Zoom, but it's something that does tie into the Sourcepoint's having the ability now to somewhat EQ the tweeter.
Right. Right
And
up.
you can have even much more control if you implement EQ in a
Well,
digital
yeah,
domain
a
at your
lot
home.
more. Totally a lot
You
more.
can address
Uh,
it for your taste, hearing loss, room issues, not just have a limited 1 dB step here or there.
any more questions coming in?
Let's see. Great Babu. Mini DSP is the brand. It's called the Mini DSP SHD, but there's a bunch of products that you can check out from Mini DSP. Very highly recommended. I've used them for many years. But a question after installing the crossovers, if you're running the Bach in your system with the 10s. Okay, so running with the crossovers, the upgraded crossovers, you were able to determine the benefits, even that you're running the Bach too, but even with the Bach, you can tell the difference. And I think that's a good point for you to address, but also me as a Bach user, and I've used it with different speakers. It doesn't mean the quality of your speakers aren't noticeable. You can't
Yeah,
EQ.
exactly.
One thing I want people to understand about measurements, and when you see any channel that's 100% measurements or 90% measurements, I am a big fan of measurements. It gives you some objective basis to go by because we don't know what your level of experience and subjective what you've heard. So there needs to be some objective basis. But these measurements are mostly are limited. They're not showing you all the possible measurements. You got to take them as a suite of measurements. But also a lot of these measurements that people sweat over to the nth degree and just a little bitty deviation, these are gated measurements, 1 foot away, not with the Bach. But in a lot of cases, these measurements are 1 foot away, which is sheer folly to what you really hear in your room, your
Mm.
ears. So many other variables come into play and not gated. When it's not a time limited signal that's being processed, you're in your room, you're hearing reflections, you're hearing everything going on. So those measurements they can show a level of engineering to high fidelity standards. That's good. Not saying they're bad, but using that to go all the way to translate it to how it sounds and then the quality is something you've got to overlook. So the Bach is going to improve on high fidelity metrics at your ear in your listening position better than anything on the market because nobody else gives you those in-ear potential.
Right.
So the Bach will standardize a lot of things for performance purposes, but you're still going to have quality gear. You still have to have a speaker that can provide full range, that's coherent, that doesn't have a lot of issues that the DSP has to fix. So to that end, I mean, I guess you could comment on how you had the Bach before and after, and you also have the Sourcepoint.
Well, I see these as sort of different issues. Um, Changing the crossover in the speaker in the Sourcepoint 10 to a superior crossover elevated the sonic performance of the speaker overall in every regard. Now, it's true that the box system has a way of sort of making a lot of the differences that we often concern ourselves with as audiophiles. A lot of that seems to drop in importance. It becomes less important, much less critical. The Bach has that kind of power and really does an amazing job. But it doesn't mean you can't hear other fundamental changes in the gear that you're using. So to me, it's like I want to get the Bach associated with the best equipment that I could put together, and certainly in this case, small investment for a big improvement in the speaker fundamentally. So they work hand in hand.
Yeah, so the great Babu is just saying he's Jeff with an extreme, so I'll call you Jeff from now on. But yeah, I had the N Extremes,
Yeah,
phenomenal speakers, and especially at their price point. If you don't mind, put them together. They're no brainer. I was very happy with them. I would go to shows, never came back wanting, as long as you have it isn't really a full range speaker, even in my small room. It
mhm.
rolled off even much more than the Potpourri WR2s, in fact. But it's an excellent speaker, especially when you pair it with subs and you have a good active crossover. Phenomenal speaker. But when I had the potpourris, it was so clear difference in the level of detail alone.
Yeah,
One driver, the just the level of detail on every single song was not only better than the Extreme, better than almost any other speaker I've ever heard, period. I mean, I'm talking about a level of detail you could hear, and both obviously I had with the Bach. So
Well,
a lot of
transparency and coherence as well. All of those
coherence, yeah,
things.
time
Yeah.
alignment is, you know, it just a line source with that level of driver, massless driver. So these are type things. And so the parts increase in quality with the Sourcepoint 10s, some other things that you can tweak. Yeah, maybe the tweeter level wouldn't make a big difference with the Bach because it's already going to be adjusted and you can adjust that for taste in the digital
Right.
domain.
That's
But
fair. Yes.
yeah, for the most part, you should be able to still appreciate the crossover improvements, just like when I improved my speakers at
Right.
a much higher cost, but definitely could hear the difference even though I had the Bach. Oh yeah, you went to Danny's. Yeah, I went to Danny's myself before I even made the GR Research in Extremes. It was a project that I'm glad I did it, but I wanted to hear what I was building ahead of time because this was going to be something that was a lot of effort, and as you can tell by the 20 videos I had to do to
Ah,
make it,
no, I thought that all just came together like a
yeah, it was not easy at all. But but yeah, that's a phenomenal speaker, and I would never tell anybody to
You
have any
lived with those
upgrade.
happily for a long time.
Yeah, I would never tell anybody to have upgrade itis because
Yeah.
it really took a special, unique type speaker like the Potpourris to get me to just
Right.
have to have that level of detail and purity and coherency. Tons of other speakers from a much higher budget never made me budge. Um, but again, if you still have to have that sub and you have to have with the Bach really took those in extremes to a whole new level because it has 20 something drivers launching from all different points, getting all that aligned as well as the sub aligned in a tight room that I have with any kind of room issues. It takes a village. So one piece alone can sound great. I can easily say that in some people's system, maybe even the N extremes could sound poor, even potentially the potpourris if you set them up wrong. Although we just set up Doug's in a condo
Right.
smashed against the wall. I did the wife acceptance factor video because she wouldn't let us do much in terms of just having them in the room was about as much as we could get. And so I was like, these measurements are going to be terrible. Well, the Bach fixed everything. It was just incredible. But also, the potpourris are very directional. Do not involve so much the
Right.
sidewalls. The back wall is a little bit of an issue sometimes, but less line sources have less ceiling and floor issues.
Far less. Yes.
So yeah, you can get away with a very poor room with certain type speakers that you can't get away with other type speakers. And so again, it takes a village, it takes everything combined. You know, a Bach with an MBL Extremes or an MBL 101s, like I had to do at Doug's house, took a lot more work because that speaker spreads the sound all around. And so if you have a poor room there, that's very important. And that's why MBL, if you go to their demo rooms at shows, they spend a lot of time and they have treatments on every surface all around. So they do a great job, but that's required for that type speaker. And so the point is, don't just say, I've got this XYZ amp, this XYZ speaker. My system sounds great. Could sound great, could also sound awful. And that's probably what my channel is more focused on than anything is showing, yeah, the greatest gear at the best possible value. Steve McCormack's one to bring you that, but tying it all together is more important. And the synergy between the electronics, the synergy with your room, and having tools like the Bach or being a DSP, Danville signal processing, Trinoff, all of these can definitely, to different degrees, get you better performance if used right. So maybe that's a good point to kind of wrap this point up because we're way off the topic of
Yeah. I
of
know.
of what we
Yeah.
wanted to. But I'm glad we did this. It didn't work exactly how I thought using the YouTube. I'm gonna
There
have
were
to
technical difficulties.
technical difficulties. I'm gonna get some help for doing it next time if there is a next time. Nothing anytime soon. Oh, want to let everybody know watching. I'm going to be at Audio Advice Live in Raleigh, North Carolina. I've also visited Van System. Go watch that system where we installed the WR1 potpourris. It's one of the best rooms I've ever been in, period. sound quality wise. Just phenomenal room. But also I'm going to be featuring another member of my channel who just got a custom, and Angela Gilbert Young will do this for me. I'm not so much, I guess I am a dealer for Angela Gilbert Young, not so much on his stock stuff, but on that power conditioner that he did custom for me. And I've sold several of those, but also anything you want done special, bring it by me and I can work with Angela Gilbert Young on some things that he has basics for if you like his work. He did a custom preamp for one of my members and also the capacitor pack. And I just got feedback today. He just got the capacitor pack. The preamp came first. Now he got the capacitor pack. He's blown away, very happy with that. And he's going to show you some of the challenges he ran into and how we addressed them, because that, again, gets into the point of synergy. Some of his amps had high gain. This preamp had high gain, and some of his amps had low gain. I'm going to walk you through. I think it's very important to show you guys how you may want to think of things ahead of time in terms of synergy to get the results that he's getting now and the pains that he went through. So we can probably help you guys with the learning curve there. So come say hi to me at Audio Vouch Live. Anything else you got coming up, Steve? Oh, I know you got a little top secret project related to the Argento outlet. That's all I'll
Yeah,
say.
no, that's true. In fact, I'll show you if you want to.
Okay. We're getting a lot of stuff out here that we really never planned to. Okay. Oh, so this fits on the wall like an Argento outlet.
Yeah.
Steve's version of it, and a duplex basically.
Yes, and I got to say briefly, totally inspired by the Argento, which is an amazing piece, very expensive, best of the best of everything. So I'm trying to get that kind of quality performance improvements, but at a lower price point.
Yeah, and also be able to bound it for a duplex type
Yeah,
environment.
the Argento is a single outlet. I came up with I have a single and a duplex version.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can't wait to get the Argento in my Airbnb. Okay, I'll also update you guys on that. For anybody wondering, I did go out to Fredericksburg last week. I gave them a deadline of Halloween to get it done. Hopefully even sooner, maybe Labor Day. But I'm not booking anything just yet. And the whole plan, I'm going to have a channel trailer where I talk about this in more detail, but I might as well talk about it here. The whole purpose of the Airbnb is not just for me to put one system in there, whatever I represent or whatever, and only stuff I like. I'm only going to carry and put stuff in there that I can recommend to people. But it's basically going to be, my thought process is a quasi 365-day a year show for audiophiles. Instead of, well, the main problem I see, I go to every show. The main problem I see is people making knee-jerk conclusions about gear in a room that's got a high noise floor. They never got the center position. They never got a dedicated demo where they got to choose the volume, the type of music, and they come out with, oh, XYZ brand sucks, and they never really got a great demo. Or conversely, they got influenced by salesman pressure, preconditioning, whatever, to like something, or too much in their head with looks and the looks of the room. This will allow you over a weekend to have set up systems that I think are definitely recommendable. And you can listen to them at your leisure, your volume, your music, and low noise floor. Take the time without a salesman over your head. And then if you decide this system is right for you, or some of the pieces are right for you, then it serves the purpose of these shows a lot better, in my opinion, than what people are getting from a hotel room over a weekend with tons of people in the room. And so that's when so it's going to be a Airbnb where gear is rotated in and out, and I will only partner with distributors, manufacturers, dealers, and I've got to know a lot of great ones. Okay, I've featured a lot of them on my channel. I'm going to let everybody have a chance that I approve and would feel good about you guys buying from. And so that's the whole goal with the Airbnb. And as soon as I can start booking things, I'll let you guys know. If you're interested, though, you could send me an email. It's always in the description. I think that should cover it. No other questions. And overall, a success. Lots of goodies in this thing. Hopefully people watch, or if they
Yeah.
don't, I guess.
All right. Well, thanks for hosting.
Yeah.
And and just to wrap this all up, I want to thank the MoFi guys for taking care of me on this. They were very kind to send me a pre-production sample, as it were. Um, and they hooked me up with an early pair of the speakers as well. So I appreciate their support very much.
And yeah, to that end, if you don't know the pedigree of Andrew Jones, you should.
You
Most
should.
people do. That is one of the most legendary speaker designers. I just heard his TADs, well, the iteration of the TADs that started with him in Dave Olson's house, even though he has a non-perfect room where he had it in Bakersfield, and it wasn't perfect room for sure, but those are phenomenal speakers. And you could tell
Absolutely.
in a
We have a
dedicated room.
client here who just got one of the most highest level upgraded DNA1 amplifiers that we've ever done. And he's got the TAD reference, the stand monitor, not the
Yeah.
floor stand. Absolutely stunning, awesome system.
Now, to that end, so yeah, Tad Gear, phenomenal. Andrew Jones, phenomenal. That's why I can 100% recommend Sourcepoints in their budget point. You probably would be hard pressed to find anything at or even,
That's
you know,
been my experience. Yeah.
sizably higher. MoFi, great company. I know they had some issues with some of the recording thing, but Lenny on the equipment side, they carry a bunch of great brands. Thumbs up to them. I did see a video. I saw a video being made. I haven't watched the video, but Tads and potpourris. Although it was a $17,000
Really?
model of potpourris and the $90,000 Tads, the dealer
Huh.
was liking the potpourris. But so that's a great test, because that's not a chintzy
No,
Tad at all.
no.
That's a very high
For
reference,
dynamic speakers,
certainly at $90,000. But yeah, two of the best potpourri and Tads. You can't go wrong. Dynamic, box
right,
speaker,
right.
electrostatic. Pick your flavor. Okay, I think that should do it. Oh, Ed got his crossover kit on the way, so he's got one.
Oh, good. Glad to
Yeah,
hear it.
and Steve's not too far away if you need any help.
Yeah, no, I'd be
He's
happy
in
to help.
California. I
Yeah,
met
sure.
him at the show. Uh, okay, guys. Well, thanks for joining and watching. Hope you enjoyed, and maybe we'll see you back here soon.
Very good. Bye for now.
Okay, take care.